Hey guys, it's me, Steven, or Keldourin, and I am going to talk about today the MMO market today, as well as games that could possibly transition from both the PC and Mac to the PS4 and possibly Xbox One. Yes, it is a PlayStation video, but I think that it should be fair game for all consoles involved. So, before I begin, I just wish to thank my friends Ricky Knight um, and Bullet Motion. Ricky Knight for walking through the SHAREfactory settings with me, and Bullet Motion for sharing the actual SHAREfactory with me to show that we don't just have to make 15-minute clips. We could just piece them all together and make a long video, and if it's a stream, we can do that. Okay then. So today we're going to talk about, like I said, the MMO market, as well as games that could easily be ported over from the computer to the PC, or PC computer to the console. I would do it over a live stream video though, and I would have done this as a panel. However, I don't have that luxury, so we're just going to do it one-on-one, mano-a-mano. So without further ado, let us begin. The MMO market has always been a very particularly fun market to branch into. It's had several different games that were most enjoyable. For example, there was DC Universe that came out on the PS3, PC, and all that, and it was fun. People enjoyed it, and they actually had fun playing it. You know, then they most recently, they had turned it to a PS4 title, simply because that they made it so it would port over to PS3 and PS4, and that led everyone to having a better time on DCU. Fewer crashes, fewer lag spikes, and depending on your internet, you actually had a stable connection throughout most of the game. That was one of the greatest games that they ever did for the PS4. However, the game itself isn't really going to come to the point where it might fail because of certain problems with the subscription, and or to the point of saying, well, the creators of the game find content to actually create for the game to have its longevity. Now, a game's longevity is usually determined by how much fun people have with its particular game. Most likely, that particular game will have its longevity reduced if people don't like the game entirely, or to the point of saying the game of its subscription to its pay-to-win or free-to-play models, brother or cousins. There are other games, such as Elder Scrolls Online, that went by the wind, like Guild Wars. Basically, what it did was it allowed people to buy the game, play for free, without any actual subscription necessary to play the actual game. Now, that particular function was actually useful, because it allowed people to explore different games, but at the same time had its own crux to the matter of saying, we want to play this particular game simply because it was by the wind, and it had few problems. The problems were very few with ESO, because yes, there were problems, but mostly it was transition problems, and they had delay after delay, but it still went pretty well. even though that people detested the game, after playing it on the first night, the first few days of the game were very strenuous. Because the game itself didn't really have a particularly longevity to it. Because people would flood the market with particular things that were not particularly helpful for the economy. That particular economy did not go well, simply because people always exploited the market to the point of flooding the market. By flooding the market, you were able to basically have items that were most likely going to be high in price, actually most likely to say inflated, to the point where people weren't able to get their items. For example, people would sell data cards. Data cards used to be at least around 20k. At least per piece. I think it was a stack of 20, basically went for about 25k. However, one data card was like 18k. I don't know about the whole market itself, but that's what I've heard. It is only a rumor and conjecture. But that wasn't the only problem. There were other problems, like system errors, to the point where there were a few glitches. Those glitches most likely turned out to be something that completely and utterly didn't go well with the actual game. The community was in an uproar. And that uproar was to the point of saying, hey, we need more of this. However, people decided in the actual game mechanics that most people didn't really think that the game itself would ever truly amount to anything. Now it is one of the greatest MMOs, and we now have a fun time playing it. Even yours truly has a fun time playing on his Vampire Templar on the Evanhart Pact. I also have fun playing on my Sorcerer and the Daggerfall Covenant, as well as my Dragonite in the Almeri Dominion. I play all the different factions. All factions led to the same place. Anywho, there are other games like subscription-based that were just so subscription-based that they didn't have the time to transfer to the games that were interesting to play. For example, World of Warcraft, Rift, and Star Wars The Old Republic. When Star Wars The Old Republic was first launched, at its launch date, it was a subscription-based game. They went free-to-play. The free-to-play model was not a particularly good move for them to do. They should have gone buy the win, because when you go buy the win, you can particularly go and bring back the revenue that you have lost through sales. If you didn't have sales, you would still have the subscription that people would optionally pay. However, you would get they would have gotten bonus payment or bonus money because people bought the game and they probably enjoyed it. If they didn't enjoy it, you would still have the money that they have spent on that one copy. I will go into later in this video about the model that they could have done and how they could have had a longer longevity. Next, we are going to talk about games like World of Warcraft and Rift. World of Warcraft, Rift, they had their subscription models and the way that Rift went. They still went free to play. However, you have an option of paying a subscription. Paying that subscription allows you to do more things. However, it is up to each and every individual to decide if they want to go on the subscription bandwagon. Most likely, people didn't do that. They played the first 20 levels of Rift and then they stopped playing it altogether. Most likely because they didn't appreciate everything that they were doing. To the point of saying that when people play a game, they don't usually continue when there is a subscription because people don't have the money to continue paying for that game. So they either give up on the game or they simply stop playing it altogether. Or they find a way, a loophole, to continue the game and still not have to pay a subscription. The subscription that most people will pay is usually $10 to $15. That $10 to $15 usually goes to other projects for that company. For example, when EA did the EA and BioWare, when they did Star Wars The Old Republic, they had that subscription model in place. But it is likely to say that the money that they gained from paying and using the game didn't particularly go back to Star Wars. It went back to actual EA and BioWare management. To say that, though, could also be, saying that they entirely as a whole did that so that way people could, feel more inclined to play a EA title or a BioWare title, because they had joined forces on those particular projects. So now that's basically the MMO market in a nutshell. That is basically what they usually do. They usually will buy a game, and hopefully that people would, enjoy buying their title. However, the titles that usually are MMOs would normally say that. Anywho, in the next half of the video, what I plan on talking about is not the MMO market in general, but the specific mechanics into the actual games themselves, into the actual ways that they could actually have made it better, to the point of saying that they didn't have to give up completely on what they were doing. The games in question that we'll be talking about are Star Trek Online, Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars The Old Republic, and a few other titles that could easily be ported over to the console from the computer. With that said, we will find out what they can truly do with the console and see what they are truly capable of to expand the universe of the console game in general. So let us see what they can do as games in general. Later. Alright, we are back, and what I plan on doing is continuing the discussion of what they could do to better understand the market in general, and possibly have a way for the games to have more of a impact on the gaming community as a whole. For example, most likely people are wondering why people like me are talking about MMOs in a way that honestly people don't want games coming to the console. However, I believe having MMOs come to the console is a very important thing. It will build a community around that game, not specifically for the console players, but also for the PC players or the computer players. We are being divided simply by console. Or platform, I guess is what we're gonna go with for this one. Platform. We're being divided by platform. Wouldn't it be fair for all console games and PC players or computer players who enjoy the games that they enjoy to play it on whatever console or platform they wish to play it on? I myself chose to try to play the game on the Star Wars Old Republic on my Mac. However, I wasn't able to do that simply because the Mac couldn't do it, because they didn't make it for the Mac. They made it for the PC. However, if you got this particular thing called Boot Camp will allow you to play a game on your Mac without having to, get a PC. Now, that's a lot of work just to play a game that you love. However, how would you feel if they actually made a game console or a console game on the MMO that they made? So basically, not changing anything, but a version or a port over, as we would say, having a port over from the computer to the console. The way that they would handle this would be simply having taking the servers that they do have, and basically make it so they can add a few additional servers for the console players. Basically having it be for Eastern servers, so basically the people who play in the East, like Japan, China, North Korea, as well as the Eastern players, not Eastern players, but the Western players, such as the EU, like in Germany, England, and the North America, sorry. We would have those different servers, but they wouldn't be divided by country, no. They would be divided by section. For example, they would be divided like North America has a server, the EU has a server, Oceanic and Asia has a server. They would do it by region, not by country. Or to the point saying that they would do it to an equilibrium of each in every individual country or region, whatever works for them. The way they would do the hotbar system or the UI system for the hotkey MMOs, for example, like Star Wars: The Old Republic and Lord of the Rings Online and Rift, if they ever decide to do this, would be to map them like they did with the console games on DCU and or Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV has a system, basically the same thing as DCU, except DCU's isn't as wide range as the Final Fantasy version is. The Final Fantasy version has 8 bars. Each bar, basically, we would hold the R1 or R2 buttons. Actually, L1, no, not L1, L2 and R2 buttons. They would basically hold those down and press a single key. Okay? So for example, if you let's take Star Wars Online. Slow Tour Online. Let's take that game for example. That game would basically have its control set up like DCU, but have extra bars. So, or like Final Fantasy did with their bars. What I hoped they would do was when you hold down L1, L2 and L2, R2 buttons, you would basically hold it down and then you would press a button. For example, I'm going to take an ability from Star Wars: The Old Republic. The ability I'm going to use is Chain Lightning. Actually, I'm going to take a few abilities. Chain Lightning, Plague, Deathmark. Take those abilities, put it on the bar. Now, use those abilities by using the L2 and R2 buttons. For example, Plague is on R2 circle. Chain Lightning is on L2 square. See what I'm getting at? You'll actually be able to do your abilities even though that you have to hold down the buttons. It is actually a perfect combination simply because it is a hotkey MMO but on a controller. You are able to do that. You could do that because people have done that before. There are programs that allow people to convert their controller and turn on a controller and map the buttons to the particular, power or ability in question. Other games can do this. Star Trek Online, Lord of the Rings Online, as well as many other games like Rift. Every game has a chance to do this because every game, like it itself, is a wonderful way of expressing how the MMO players like to play their games. Another thing would be the subscription models in place, and how the marketplaces would be able to handle the fluctuation of people in or out of the actual thing. For example, what you could do is have PlayStation and Microsoft make a deal with EA and BioWare. Basically, making some of the purchasable items or the subscriptions payment options be able to be usable for the PlayStation Plus and the Marketplace for Xbox. Now, here's the thing. If you have PlayStation Plus or Xbox Gold, maybe you would be able to get a discount. Maybe you won't. Maybe the actual discount in and of itself would be able to help you gain a perspective of how to particularly do the subscription or the payment options for the game itself. For example, let's say you were able to get a time card or buy time off of the Marketplace or the PlayStation Store. How about putting that as a gold member or plus member subscription thing? So those who have PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live be able to play that game and have for example, the cartel on Star Wars be open to those who have the subscription models already for their respective consoles. I don't really see it coming to the Wii because I don't really see the GameCube having its GameCube like with Nintendo. I don't think they would actually go well with that. So we're gonna count out the GameCube. Sorry, GameCube. I don't wanna. I mean, maybe it could work, but you would also have to use the GameCube controller and do the same mapping with the GameCube controller. Anywho, let's get back to subscriptions and the intricacies of how they could do the payment model, because we've already talked about the controls. The payment model would be simple. They could, like I said earlier, they could easily just make it so that you would pay with the subscription model. However, the subscription model may not always be the most logical thing to do. So you could just go free to play, or if you have extra, some spare cash, go preferred. When you go preferred, you'll get more options, but you're not gonna have as many options as a subscription-based player. But you'll have more options from a free-to-play player. That said, those are just some of the ideas. Those are some ideas of what people can do for the game itself, simply because the game itself is more enjoyable when you play with people that are like-minded individuals that you like to play with. For example, I myself like to play World of Warcraft, so if I could find the person who plays World of Warcraft and play other games like Star Wars: The Republic and have fun on the console and enjoy myself, maybe I wouldn't give up on MMOs entirely, and maybe I'd be able to play the MMO on the console in general, simply because that I enjoy playing the console and I like playing on the computer. But what if I want to play on the console more? What if I want to play on my favorite MMO on the console? I could do that then if they put it on the console. I wouldn't be able to play it if they just kept it for the computer. We also have to take an effect of the community. What would the community think of the actual, porting of an MMO to the console? I mean, they did that once before. They've done that several times. They have ported console, computer games to the console, and vice versa. But here's the thing: it is much harder to port a computer game from a console to the computer than it is vice versa, computer games to the console. That's what most people would believe. But the truth actually is, it's easier to port a computer game to a console. So that's it. However, that is basically what I believe in actualities of the PC, Mac, and console players, so anywho, the actual baseline of it is, I wish they would be able to bring the computer games to consoles. Why am I saying consoles to computers? Oh well, I'm rambling long enough, so feel free to like